My name is Angus Brown. I'm 21 years old. I use she, her pronouns, and my friends call me Annie. I'm from East London, sort of Essex, and I live in Norwich now. I just finished a bachelor's in English literature, and that's the past 3 years for me. For a long time I thought of myself as a spoken word artist, and to an extent I still do. A lot of the time at the moment I'm writing lyrics. I tell stories, and I tell the stories that are kind of hard for me to say out loud, like I love you, or I don't love you anymore, or I'm sorry, or thank you, or I regret this, or I don't regret this, and I feel like I should. Sometimes the easiest way of doing that is in a song, and sometimes the easiest way of doing that is in a poem, and sometimes it's a short story. It can sound a little bit prettier, and it can sound like I have control over it, which I never do. But yeah, I started off doing performance poetry. Then I discovered this album. There's a Skeleton Tree by Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, my favourite band, and this album was the most exciting thing I'd heard, and across the course of 8 songs, about 40 minutes, it takes you from this absolute pit of despair and confusion to that kind of very, very comforting repetition of it's all right now. It felt like somebody had been through pain in a similar way to me and had begun to process it in a similar way to me, and then I just couldn't stop writing, and I'm still doing it. I identify as a transgender lesbian, or transdyke is the popular term. So gender is an enormous part of why I write and how I write. I find it easier to identify as a lesbian than a transgender woman sometimes. For a start, lesbian codifies you immediately as a woman, but I think it distracts from it. I think there's something in the word lesbian, etymologically, that implies mannishness, and there's a lot of masculinity in me, and I'm very, very aware of that. My last album, my proudest piece of work, a lot of it is gender euphoria and joy in that relief at being able to identify myself with the way I do and dress the way I do and call myself what I call myself. I think of it as one long continuous poem, but it's a bit kind of looser than that. Some of it's lyrics, some of it's spoken word, and a lot of it is that kind of enormous relief of reading something else that somebody's written or hearing something else that somebody's said that reminds you you're not the first person to tread these grounds, and you often feel that you're so alone in something, but then you encounter this book or this record or this film and it gets it exactly right. It leans quite heavily on the story of Euphoria and Yanthi, a girl who's raised as a boy. She's engaged to another girl because nobody knows that she's secretly a girl. She talks so much about how nobody knows what she's going through and nobody's there for her, and then eventually everything kind of pulls through and she just presents herself differently, and she presents herself in this more confident way, and she marries happily, and then they have great sex, and then the story just ends. I resonated a lot with that feeling of needing to present slightly differently in order to feel right about sex and relationships, but also about myself. And you learn so much about yourself from the people you fancy. There's a lot of talk about fancying in the album, because referring to myself as a lesbian and thinking about myself in terms of the people that I've felt close to and attracted to has really informed my sense of self in that sense. And you could probably tell from the leather jacket that it informs the way I dress as well. So very young, got mud lying in our lungs. Living is really, really, really hard so much of the time. I think that's the urgency in terms of mental health for me and my writing. Particularly my first year, I struggled a lot with alcohol. I have been suicidal in the past. I have experience of self-harm. So it's often a hard thing to talk about or to write about. I've tried to write about how awful I feel, and it just ends up letting me further into the pit and kind of letting me wallow, and that stuff's not been so healthy, and that stuff I'm less proud of. There was a lot of me that felt like I needed to give and give a lot. When I started taking time and space for myself, I had a better relationship with myself, but I also had a better relationship with my friends, and I was able to be more supportive to my friends. Sometimes just saying I'm struggling and I can't see a way out, sometimes that kind of transparency and that honesty is the most important thing you can say. A deal I made with my mum when I was 17 was, you never had to talk about what was going on, but you did have to say if you weren't okay. That's where I start. That's the deal I make with all my friends. I think I put out a poem the other day called Contempt Parable, and other people went, yes, exactly, that's exactly how I felt, and that is the most rewarding feeling in the world. The idea that you could write something that touches somebody else. All of the work to get better and to kind of live a life worth living has happened off the page, but to be able to say, this is what I felt and this is how I'm going to get through it. There's so much value in that. I'm quite alarmingly honest about some stuff. I put a lot of detail about my life into these stories. I think it comes very, very directly. I don't edit my poems a lot. I think most of writing is intuitive. Often it's only the second or third draft that is the one that I'm happy with. I think the best writing advice I ever got was write absolutely everything that's in your head and then just cross out the worst bits. There are poems that I've been trying to write for years that I keep trying and it doesn't feel quite right, so I go back and I try again. I think I need it to be raw. A lot of where the kind of exhaustion that makes a piece of writing interesting or feel real comes from that first draftness of it. Often not actually the first draft, but something that feels like the first draft, something that feels extremely off the cuff and immediate. It's extremely cathartic. And I do something with my life, but it never felt quite right, and so I'll sort it all and write, and so I'll sort it all and write, and so I'll I'm very, very aware that I don't know much about music at all. I think I had 3 grades of piano and I failed the 4th one, and then I just kind of stopped. I don't feel that competent at all. I started doing the music to make the words themselves more interesting and to kind of give them some kind of space to kind of hook off, but I think that's doing it a disservice. I want the music itself to be interesting and fun. I really, really love my guitar, Bonnie, and I think I'm very much feeling my way through things. I'm always guessing with music, and with the lyrics as well, but with the music I feel I know less. I'm less kind of qualified to talk about what chords go where, how the timings work, whether or not I'm using drums right, I'm not sure. It's all guesswork, I think. On my best days, I'm extremely aware that it doesn't actually matter how good it is. It's that I did it, and I did it for me, and that it might find its way to somebody who needs to hear it. And on my worst days, it feels awful, and I don't know how to record, and I don't know how to put keys and chords and melodies together, and that there are a whole host of people the same age as me and younger than me who seem more accomplished and seem more professional, and that really defeats me some days. But I'm very, very proud of what I've done. The moments where I feel like I haven't done very much at all, they pass, and it gets easier. I guess the patience expired, I guess sagacity's gone. I guess all the poems are ended and their promises cons. I guess this little boy's weak, yeah, he's overly fond, because when a woman has hurt you, you can do nothing wrong, right? I move, you move, and one more time with feeling. Rape the white. If I was advising a younger version of myself, I think I'd share with them the James Baldwin quote that underpins so much of my writing at the moment, which is, you think your pain and your heartbreak are unprecedented in the history of the world, and then you read. I spent so much time convincing myself that I'm alone in the way that I feel, and it's just not true. I've never been alone. I just feel lonely sometimes, and that's okay, but it's not true. Just because you feel it doesn't mean it's there, and I think that's what I needed to hear for a long time. I am the moth who's been hit by a train. I move, you move, and one more time, feeling.